House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America. Hello and welcome to First Post America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Egyptian media confirms all parties, including Israel, agreed to resume talks for a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel had rejected a truce offer proposed by Qatar and Egypt, which was accepted by Hamas. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife arrived in Serbia for talks on boosting economic ties. Xi's visit to the Balkan nation comes on the anniversary of NATO's bombing of Serbia. Berlin's former mayor suffers minor head injuries after being hit from behind by an attacker. This is the second attack on members of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's party within a week. Kenya reports over 40 cases of cholera after being hit by weeks of torrential rain and floods. The World Health Organization raises alarm bells, calling the situation particularly dangerous for young children. And a Boeing cargo plane has a narrow escape as it lands without the front landing gear at Istanbul Airport. There have been more than 50 accidents involving Boeing planes already this year. We begin right here in the United States, where former adult film star Stormy Daniels testified against Donald Trump in the hush money trial in Manhattan. The testimony was by far the biggest spectacle for the trial, with an appearance by the former porn actress who said she'd had an affair with the former president. With Donald Trump sitting just feet away, Daniels provided explicit details of their tryst. The former actress said she had a sexual encounter with Donald Trump back in 2006 that resulted in her being paid to keep silent when Trump ran for president 10 years later. Daniels spoke about how she first met Donald Trump at a celebrity golf tournament and that it was the former president who initiated the meeting by inviting her to dinner. Daniels spent much of the time on the stand detailing her first encounter with the ex-president, providing a salacious narrative for the jury. In fact, according to reports from inside the courtroom, Donald Trump could be seen feverishly imploring his legal counsel to object to the lascivious details being shared. In fact, Justice Juan Merchan, who was overseeing the hush money trial, actually interrupted the testimony multiple times to voice objections and to admonish the prosecution for the lurid specifics being offered by their witness. Daniels also claimed after their first encounter, the former president offered to see her again, but she declined the offer. Now, the former president has repeatedly denied an affair with the adult film actress. After providing testimony for the prosecution, Donald Trump's lawyers cross-examined Daniels and accused her of trying to extort money from the then reality television star and presidential contender. However, Daniels insisted that she had no intent of approaching Donald Trump or his then lawyer, Michael Cohen, for a financial deal. After Daniels' testimony, Trump came out of the courtroom furious, calling the hush money trial a disaster.
So this was a very big day, a very revealing day. As you see, their case is totally falling apart. They have nothing on books and records, and even something that should bear very little relationship to the case. It's just a disaster for the DA, for the Soros-backed DA. It's a disaster. This whole case is just a disaster. If you read the legal scholars, you'll see, because they're writing about it, they've never seen anything quite like it. And neither have I.
And the former president did not stop there. In fact, he once again went after his rival, President Joe Biden.
All comes out of the White House and crooked Joe Biden. This comes from the White House, and it's all Biden because it's an attack on his political opponent. That hasn't happened in this country. It does happen in third world countries, but it hasn't happened in this country, and it's a shame. And the trial is a very unfair trial. It's a very, very unfair trial. The good news is they have nothing.
Now, the vivid and graphic testimony by Stormy Daniels has revealed fresh details of a case that's been in the spotlight for years now. It's unclear what impact Daniels' testimony will have on the jury, but her story will undoubtedly color the race for the White House in the coming days and weeks. And at a time when Biden is gaining momentum and beginning to take the lead in some new polling data, you can bet the only color Trump is seeing right now is red. And in the Middle East, Israel continues with airstrikes in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Israeli troops now completely control Gaza's Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Fighting between the Israeli army and Hamas has forced the evacuation of the city's main hospital. Many nations, including the United States, have repeatedly warned Israel against the ongoing military offensive.
This appears to be a limited operation, but of course much of that depends on what comes next. They have said, I think quite clearly, it's no secret that they want to conduct a major military operation there. We have made clear that we oppose such an operation. And separately, but of course it's related, we are trying to achieve an agreement that would bring an immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages.
Now, Washington has taken the unprecedented step of withholding a shipment of bombs and ammunition designated for Israel. This comes as the United States accuses Israel of not fully addressing President Biden's concerns of the humanitarian needs of Palestinians in the Gaza city. The stalled shipment for Israel includes Boeing-made Joint Direct Attack Munitions, or JDAMs, which convert dumb bombs into guided missiles. The cargo also includes 1,800 bombs that weigh 2,000 pounds and another 1,700 bombs that weigh 500 pounds. Now, this is, in fact, the first time that the United States has withheld a weapons delivery from Israel since the war first began in October of last year. Meanwhile, Israel has said weapons or no weapons, the invasion of Rafah will move forward.
Yesterday, I directed the IDF to enter the Rafah area, take the crossing and carry out its missions. This operation will continue until we eliminate Hamas in the Rafah area and the entire Gaza Strip, or until the first hostage returns. We are willing to make compromises in order to bring back hostages, but if that option is removed, we will go on and deepen the operation. This will happen all over the Strip, in the south, in the center, and in the north. We know that Hamas only responds to force.
Now, Washington continues to oppose the operation, convinced that Israel will not ensure the safety of over 1 million Palestinians that are in the city. And the United States has dispatched a delegation to Israel, including CIA Director William Burns. Burns will hold talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a last-minute effort to secure a ceasefire deal. Now, Hamas has already accepted a 3-stage ceasefire proposed by Qatar and Egypt late Monday. And the first stage includes the exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. Details of the ceasefire accepted by Hamas have emerged and highlight that the Palestinian group agreed to release 33 Israeli hostages, including those that are dead. Israel says the proposal fails to meet even the basic demands put forward by Israel, which includes the release of all hostages.
As the war cabinet unanimously determined, the Hamas proposal is very far from Israel's necessary requirements. Israel will not allow Hamas to restore its evil rule in the Gaza Strip. Israel will not allow it to restore its military capabilities to continue striving for our destruction. Israel cannot accept a proposal that endangers the security of our citizens and the future of our country.
Now, for months, Israel had been postponing its offensive by pinning its hope on this ceasefire. But since no agreement has been reached, it appears Netanyahu is upping the ante with an all-out invasion in Rafah. And moving to the Caribbean nation of Haiti, troops from the United States are reportedly in Haiti building barracks and other facilities. This comes ahead of the deployment of about 1,000 police officers from Kenya to the troubled nation. A United Nations-backed multinational force has been tasked with helping Haiti's police rein in criminal gangs and is being led by the East African nation of Kenya. Now, Caribbean media says that American troops are among the civilian contractors who landed in Haiti just last week. And the contractors are consulting on behalf of the Pentagon while also helping secure the airport in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. They're also mapping out an area where the Kenyan troops will stay during the peacekeeping mission. Now, reports say standing up the military base is likely to take 6 weeks and that Kenyan troops are expected in Haiti later this month. Now, this is all happening amid the backdrop of Kenyan President William Ruto's visit to the United States. President Ruto will be hosted by President Biden while marking the 60th anniversary of U.S. and Kenya's diplomatic relations. The development comes days after Haiti's Transitional Council picked Fritz Belazer as the new prime minister. Now, the criminal gangs who launched coordinated attacks in February still retain control of 90% of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. And notably, the international security mission to help Haiti was first announced by the United Nations 7 months ago. However, it has faced multiple setbacks as Kenyan opposition lawmakers and the courts objected to sending troops to Haiti. Now, Kenya's police officers have been given the green light. And besides Kenya, more than half a dozen other countries, including the Bahamas, Bangladesh, Barbados, Benin, Chad, and Jamaica, have also pledged to send personnel to the peacekeeping mission in Haiti. After many delays and setbacks, it appears the international mission is finally on track. Still, the criminal gangs appear undeterred by the developments and are clearly dug in. Only time will tell if the Transition Council can solve this vexing problem and eventually piece the perennially maligned nation back together. And moving to West Africa, Togo's president has signed a new constitution that eliminates presidential elections. Instead, it allows the country's parliament to choose the president. Now, this comes just 2 days after his party won a majority in the parliamentary polls. Now, opposition parties have called the reform a political maneuver to allow the president to extend his decades-long tenure. So what exactly does the new constitution say, and how could it help the Togolese president? Our next report goes into detail.
The West African nation of Togo is surrounded by a controversy over constitutional reform. Togo's president, Faure Gnassingbé, has signed a new constitution that eliminates presidential elections, and critics say the move will allow him to extend his family's 6-decade-long rule. So what exactly does Togo's new constitution say? Well, the Togolese parliament will now have the power to choose the president instead of direct elections. The new constitution also creates a role similar to a prime minister. This post is called the President of the Council of Ministers, which will be taken by Gnassingbé and could give additional powers to him. In addition, the new constitution increases the presidential term from 5 to 6 years. It does introduce a single-term limit for the president. However, this doesn't take into account almost 20 years that Gnassingbé has already served in office. Now, Togo's opposition parties claim the role is designed for Gnassingbé to evade presidential term limits and extend his family's political dynasty. A group of around 20 civil society organizations in Togo have also called for protests to reinstate the previous constitution. Under the old constitution, Gnassingbé would have been able to run for presidency just one more time. Upon winning, he would have started his 5-year term in 2025 and would have been out of office by 2030. But now, critics say Gnassingbé will be able to remain in power without any term limit as long as his party has a majority in the National Assembly. The new constitution comes just 2 days after Gnassingbé's ruling party won 108 out of 113 seats in the parliament and 137 out of 179 seats in the Senate. Opposition parties have denounced irregularities, including alleged ballot stuffing in the polls that took place on April 29th. However, regional observers say that they are satisfied with the way the elections were conducted. The vote was delayed twice because of a backlash from some opposition parties over the constitutional changes. Before the polls, there was even a crackdown on civic and media freedoms in Togo. Nyasimbe's government banned protests against the proposed new constitution. Opposition figures were also arrested for criticizing the reform. Meanwhile, the Election Commission had banned the Catholic Church from deploying election observers. Togo's media regulator had also suspended the accreditation process for foreign journalists. Notably, Togo has been ruled by Nyasimbe's family for 57 years. His father, Eyadema Nyasimbe, seized power in a coup in 1967. He was immediately succeeded by his son Faure Nyasimbe after his death in 2005. And keeping father-son traditions alive, crackdowns on political demonstrations continue under President Faure Nyasimbe, just as they were during his father's long rule.
Though COVID no longer dominates the headlines, vaccine maker AstraZeneca certainly does. The company is withdrawing its vaccine from the markets, and the pharmaceutical giant claims it's because of a decline in demand. But notably, this decision comes weeks after AstraZeneca admitted that the Covishield vaccine can cause blood clots. In the UK alone, the firm is facing more than 50 lawsuits over these claims. Our final report takes you inside the drug maker's decision to pull the vaccine from the market.
In the whirlwind of the pandemic era, COVID-19 vaccines emerged as beacons of hope. Hundreds of people waited eagerly for their shot at protection. During that time, nothing seemed more important than a COVID-19 vaccine. Among the heroes were Covishield, Covaxin, Novavax and Sputnik V. But now the spotlight dims. Pharmaceutical firm AstraZeneca has begun the worldwide withdrawal of its Covishield vaccine. The makers feel that the vaccine, which once promised to give immunity against COVID-19, is no longer needed. Their decision stems from a surplus of newer vaccines available in the market. AstraZeneca says the newer vaccines are tailored to combat the evolving virus variants, which makes their Covishield vaccines obsolete. The pharmaceutical giant says this has led to a decline in demand, which is why they no longer want to manufacture it. They now want to conclude their era of pandemic response efforts. But there's another side to AstraZeneca's miracle vaccine. The pharmaceutical giant faces daunting legal battles. A lawsuit totaling over $100 million in the UK looms over AstraZeneca. The allegations link their COVID jab to the deaths of 80 individuals and countless severe injuries. The first legal case came last year by a man who was left with a permanent brain injury. The number of cases have now reportedly risen to 51. AstraZeneca contests the accusations, but the company also accepted that in very rare cases, Covishield can cause TTS. TTS stands for thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome. It causes blood clots and a low blood platelet count. The medical community had reportedly accepted the possibility of blood clots in 2021. Several scientists studied the potential serious side effects of Covishield. Experts recommended an alternative jab for people under the age of 40. They said that the risk of the AstraZeneca vaccine outweighed the harm posed by COVID-19. Despite claims of saving over 6.5 million lives during the pandemic and distributing over 3 billion doses worldwide, AstraZeneca now finds itself on shaky ground. As the curtain falls on this chapter, questions linger over the legacy of AstraZeneca's vaccine. Once hailed as a global lifeline against the pandemic, was Covishield rolled out too fast and were people made the test subjects? Or did the vaccine work wonders for billions, making the fresh cases of death and injury just an anomaly?
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America.